This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. I am Chris Graham, and I've got Jerry Carter on the long line, and we're connected here on Friday as we would normally talk on a Friday. And I guess it's Friday. My schedule's my calendar says Friday. For me, it's day 5 of the new era. I call it that. UVA Basketball win the national championship, and Jerry and I are going to talk about that and cover as much as we can of all the ins and outs, the X's and O's, and the behind-the-scenes stuff. Jerry, thank you for joining me on the podcast, and you can probably tell I'm still pretty giddy over what happened Monday night.
Well, Chris, first of all, anybody listening to today's podcast, if you hadn't had a chance to catch the podcast that you and Zach put together yesterday, you really want to do that. That was really entertaining for me to listen to and to hear the insights of what all happened. It was pretty neat. So if anybody listens to today and hadn't listened to yesterday, you need to go back and find a way to do that. But the coolest part of it is they can't take it back, Chris. They can't take it back. Once you win one, it's yours. It's yours to keep. And I'm so glad on so many fronts that this came about. And it is funny. The first thing you start thinking about when it happens is the trail, the journey, the adventure. And it's something where you start thinking about, okay, we're gonna make a lifetime movie here. Someone in Hollywood's gonna write this script, and it's hard to imagine that the script would be believable if you hadn't been there for it. When you paint the picture of going from one end of the spectrum to the other, it's crazy, and it's been a fun time out here. And again, the folks out here in Washington State have a little bit of a tie to the process as well because of the connection to Tony. But it's been a great time, and I can only imagine what it looked like through your eyes being able to be there courtside. So the first thing that sticks out to me in the thought process was, wow, DeAndre Hunter in the second half of the championship game. That would have to be my starting point. And was really nervous at the half. 1 for 8, 5 points. He was playing incredible defense. But that was one of those games where in the past I kind of felt like when DeAndre was playing and the game wasn't going his way, that he would take his foot off the accelerator. And I got to say pretty loud and clear, that did not happen Monday night. And what were you thinking while you were watching that second half and overtime take place?
Well, I'll even go back to pregame. I was the silly person. Probably, I was the first writer to sit on press row just because I got there at 5:30 local time, 6:30 Eastern, so the seat assignments were posted hours before that. But when I shouldn't say I got there at 5:30. You can go out and sit courtside starting at 5:30 local time, and I thought, I've sat in media workrooms for 20 years. I'm not sitting in the media workroom tonight. I'm going out courtside. I'm going to sit out there. I'm going to sit out there until the game's over. So I'm out there and, watching guys walk out one by one to warm up. And that's a great privilege. It's championship night. It's Christmas Day times a million. And so I say that to say this about DeAndre. One thing that the UVA team was doing well, I thought, was Francisco Cafaro, who's a 7'1" center, redshirted this year, international player, really top recruit. Just he got injured in the FIBA Under-18 World Championships that were played this past summer in Canada, and had to undergo surgery. And it wasn't bad surgery; it just would have set him off in terms of his ability to develop and be a role player this season. And so the decision was made, hey, we'll redshirt you this year. But he was pretty healthy as, the season got from December to January. Maybe he could have played. He just didn't. Okay, so I say all that to say Cafaro was out there, and as guys were warming up shooting, they weren't just weren't just going through the motions of shooting jump shots and that kind of thing. Cafaro was working with three guys. He was working with Ty Jerome, Kyle Guy, and DeAndre Hunter. 7'1" guy, and standing there, he's got a reach. I can't tell you what it is officially, but it looks like he can touch 10 feet in the air. I mean, he's probably 9.5, 9.2, 9.3, something like that. But he's got a great reach. And so what those guys would do was they would simulate running off screens and then shooting over top of Cafaro. Well, Kyle and Ty were shooting pretty well, and DeAndre was missing everything. And I'm just thinking, oh, this is not a good sign. Like, Cafaro is playing too good a defense here. I mean, everything was short. A couple were long, but most everything was short. And so he was aggressive. And as the game starts, he's aggressive. And that was – I talked with Carolyn Durney, the Streaking the Lawn writer. A lot of folks listening to this podcast certainly know who Carolyn is. And she's been covering the team for a long time, too. And we talked after the game about how, okay, even though he started 0 for 7, he was 1 for 8 at halftime, DeAndre was at least aggressive. I've been writing for weeks about how we'd love to see DeAndre finally kind of summon that inner Malcolm Brogdon and take over a game when necessary. And that's not his – it hasn't been his DNA to do that. He had one game where he did that, the first Louisville game, where he had 26 points, 9 of 11 shooting. But for the most part, he's deferential. I mean, he plays within the system. And, whereas Malcolm Brogdon, by Malcolm's, like the second part of Malcolm's junior season, the ECC part, and then the NCAA tournament part of his junior season and his whole senior season, Malcolm would be – he had the authority, maybe you could say, to say, hey, I'm taking this one over. It's mine. Give me the ball. And so, we always were wishing, hey, DeAndre, take it over. Do what you need to do. Second half, he took it over. He got fouled on the first offensive possession, made 2 free throws for UVA. He made got a pass in the post and made a nice little bunny layup after fighting his guy off and getting in for a nice high percentage shot. And then he went crazy. He was hitting shots off the dribble. He was 4 for 4 from 3-point range. He's a 42% 3-point shooter, but except for the one that tied the game at the end of regulation, which was a wide open shot on a nice play designed by Tony Bennett, execution by Ty Jerome, they were contested shots. He just did for the first time, the first real tangible time in his UVA career, he took a game over. And so he started 0 for 7. He made 8 of his last 9 shots. And, he got an offensive rebound put back. He was making foul shots. I mean, he just did so much that that was the DeAndre that we hoped wouldn't finally emerge once he's in the NBA. We hoped we would at least see one time where DeAndre would just be the man. And he saved it for the national championship game, and that's why UVA's national champs, because of DeAndre Hunter stepping up in that way.
Yeah, it was really, to me, that was the most obvious thing about the game. And you and I had talked all season, again, using the comparison of using the big three thought process about Cam Reddish. By comparison, you've got somebody who you know is going to play at the next level. You know that they're going to be a lottery pick. You know all these things are going to happen. But at times, they could disappear during a game. And like I said, Hunter's situation, when you're sitting there and watching that, the 8 out of 9, you're just going, wow, you can't get any bigger on the big stage. And it's fascinating when you stop and look at it. You got to ask yourself the journey as a whole. It's six games, and in 5 of the 6, they were playing to win the game in the last day. I mean, the only exception to that was the Oklahoma game. I didn't feel the Oklahoma game was ever in doubt, and the Gardner-Webb game to an extent wasn't bucket for bucket all the way until the very end. But not only did they get it done, but the manner of getting it done was clutch victory after clutch victory. And the other thing you have to acknowledge being the process, the free throw shooting. By comparison, the women's national championship game came down to the inability to hit a free throw. And the Michigan State Duke game came down to the inability to hit a free throw at the end. You had to be sit there in the overtime going 12 for 12 when you're playing for the national championship. That was just amazing to me. It wasn't as if one player hit all 12 of them.
Right.
Everybody that went to the line, it just looked like to me, and again, your view was a lot different because you were in the building. To me, it just looked like they knew what they were doing. They were comfortable doing it. And with that said, kudos to Texas Tech for putting on the show that they did and taking it to that point. And we talked a little bit about Chris Beard and what he's accomplished. And the Red Raiders did themselves proud in taking it to overtime before finally falling. But Chris, my first question to you is, when it ended, and you realized it had happened, what was your first thought sitting there courtside?
Well, yeah, that's I guess when the two free throws went in from Braxton Key, really when he had the breakaway dunk, Virginia surrendered a couple of basically gimme baskets at the end, not wanting to foul. They were up 7. They were up 8 points, let it get back to 6, got back up 8, went back to 6. When the Texas Tech called timeout when they cut up to 6 the last time, and Virginia ran that play and sent everybody up except for Key, who ran back, and the Texas Tech folks kind of all played. They were playing to foul or steal the ball or foul, and then Key got the breakaway dunk. And I watched. I mean, Kyle got. I've watched the replay from the TV broadcast, and the TV broadcast did not pick this up because the camera panned away from this. But it's still probably like 13 seconds left. I don't remember what it was. But when he threw that dunk down, Kyle Guy ran down the court and jumped in his arms. It's an 8-point game. I mean, the game's over. It's an 8-point game. Weird things have happened. But it's an 8-point game with like 12, 13 seconds left. Kyle Guy jumps in his arms. And again, I've looked for the replay. I've looked for every angle from a TV standpoint of the replay. So that's one thing I got to see in person that you guys didn't get to see at home was Kyle Guy already. I mean, he jumped in Braxton Key's arms, and then Braxton Key kind of like threw him off, like, "Hey, we still got to play defense," That's when it hit me, like, this is over. This is actually over. I mean, when it's a 6-point game, things can happen. You can have a ball stolen, they can hit a 3, whatever. It got to be 8. Kyle's already jumping up and down. He's the emotional guy on this team anyway. So, I'm starting to think, like, wow, there's going to be confetti coming down here. There's going to be, all this going on. And we've seen ACC tournaments in this way, but this is the big boy. And, and then, those seconds count down. I'm grabbing my phone. I'm trying to record the moment for posterity, and I leave the phone recording for 2 minutes, and the UVA band is playing the song over and over and over, and it's going on. I think I got, like, just right at 2 minutes of video, and there's confetti falling everywhere. And then I look down press row, and this is a cool thing because, I haven't bragged about this on this podcast yet, but all the people that I'm friends with got text with me saying this. Our seat on press row for the semifinals, Zach and I were both behind one of the baskets. You're on the floor. You're not complaining. You're at the NCAA tournament. You're at the Final Four. But it was a little bit of an obstructed view. For the final, there was one AFP seat that was center court, second row. And I'm saying that laughing because, oh, my God, it's just, it's amazing. I'm 5 feet from the floor. It's an elevated floor. I'm looking up at the game. That's how I remember everything from this championship game, looking up at the game. I'm sitting behind Jim Nance. He's to my left. John Thompson's to my right, basically. Like, I could touch them. They're so close. So that's all going on, and we didn't get that treatment by ourselves. I mean, the Final Four folks were awesome to us in this respect. They gave the local Virginia media great access, and the part of Media Row I was sitting on was, I would call it the blogger part of Media Row. It was me, and it was Streaking the Lawn, and it was the Cavs Corner website and the Sabre website, and you realize, like, after other games, you kind of rush back to the locker room because you wanted, the locker rooms were open pretty quickly after the game's over. But they're not going to open the locker room pretty quickly after this, and they've got to set up a stage. They're going to do the presentation. Jim Nantz talks to them live. We all watch One Shining Moment. All that stuff's going on. And so as they're setting the stage up, you realize that's going to take a few minutes. We have a chance to write our recap right now, so let's get to work. But I look down towards the rest of Blogger Row, and I see that I'm not the only one tearing up. It meant that much. I mean, we're people who write about it. We're supposed to be detached, but we're not. And it's the first one. I mean, I say the first one because I think there are going to be more championships to come, but it's the first one, and this is special. And I look down and I see, okay, now I don't feel so bad. I'm tearing up and they're tearing up. So, okay, got to get to work, but we are all cognizant of the moment and what a special moment that was.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable moment, and again, on our end, where Rebecca is concerned, and it's one thing for me to have been a lifetime UVA fan, but I started recruiting my daughter to go to UVA in the 6th grade. Started pushing the point of, hey, you've got to learn more about this place. You've got to understand. You've got to the amount of emotion, and she's not your diehard basketball fan, if you will, to where she's going to watch every game. But the amount of emotion and the amount of pride she took in the process was really special for us. Yeah, you're in a situation to where when you're looking at it and you're talking about the possibility of, hey, the first of many, the first of on the road, the first thing I noticed, and again, it when they came out with the odds to win next year's, that's when you find out if the team, they do that, I swear, Chris, within 30 seconds of the game. And if the national people feel like that your team was a fluke or it wasn't a true national championship, you'll see it in the odds. And that was the first thing that stuck out to me was that UVA enters next year. Again, this is pre-draft, but enters next year as the 5-1 betting favorite to win next year's national championship.
Yeah.
And that was something that the average person wouldn't pay a whole lot of attention to. But I'm looking at that going, there's a credibility thing there. You're sitting there, and this wasn't like, the fluke and some of the national championships that have been won in the past were that. A couple of them that really stick out was, I'm dating myself a little bit, but, when Al McGuire and Marquette announced that he's going to retire at the end of the tournament, and they make this crazy run through it, only to really never be heard from again. You're in a situation with the Michigan, when Michigan won theirs, when they made the coaching change at the end of the regular season, you're sitting there saying, okay, hey, they won this, but this isn't what could be the norm. When they came out and listed UVA at 5-1 for next year, I'm going, wow, I think they understand. And the only person, again, you're there in the building, so I'm not sure if you had access to the halftime show that CBS put on. And that was something that was incredibly disappointing to me. And normally those guys do a nice job talking about things. And I love the energy they had in it. But I felt at the halftime of the Virginia-Texas Tech game, they were talking about somebody has got to do something different. Somebody's got to get out of their comfort zone. You don't win a national championship this way, playing this style. You can't use this. You've got to, and all of them. It was all Kenny, Charles, and Kellogg were all saying the same thing. Like somehow they were bored with the first half, which I just didn't understand at all. And I'm I'm not rocked by it, but these two teams play the same way. Newsflash: somebody's going to win a national championship playing this style, and that was probably the only deterrent to the thing. I was sitting there listening to that. I'm going, you've got two teams that play similar basketball, and they're playing it for the national championship. You do the math. Somebody's going to win that game.
Yeah, we didn't have access to that, fortunately, I guess, in the arena, and they were just following their narrative. The media narrative as a whole heading into Monday night was this is going to be the worst national championship game you'll ever watch. It's two very boring teams. They play defense, which is interesting. And there's no stars in this game, even though Jarrett Culver and DeAndre Hunter are both projected top 10 lottery picks coming up in a couple of months. The media folks were upset that Zion wasn't in the Final Four and wasn't in the championship game, and and these two teams play defense. They play 4 and 5 year guys. Both teams had redshirt seniors on their teams who played significant roles and that kind of thing, and so the first half was a tight game. It was 32-29. It sort of lived up to or lived down to those expectations. You play it out. That's a roughly 60-59 final score if you go by pace. And then those two teams came out in the second half. The two best defensive teams in the nation, and they came out and made shot after shot after shot. Texas Tech was 15 of 28 in the second half shooting. Virginia was 13 of 25 in the second half shooting. Virginia had as much as a 10-point lead. Texas Tech came back, took the lead they had a 3-point lead with 22 seconds to go after a pair of free throws. Virginia ties it on a 3. I mean, you can't have a better way to do that. Doesn't take the lead finally until that second 3 by DeAndre Hunter with 2:09 to go. It was still a game into the final minute before Virginia closed it out. A couple misses by Texas Tech, some free throws, great free throw shooting by Virginia. And what's funny about it, Jerry, is this most boring championship game you'll ever watch turned out to be the highest scoring championship game since 2000. And so the media people at halftime those guys were just going by the script that they'd already written. They didn't actually probably watch much of the game. Chuck's saddles were probably a little chapped, from Auburn losing on Saturday night the way they did. So and Kenny hadn't been a part of that for a while with his UNC team not being there. They're NBA guys. They don't watch college basketball very much. I don't think they have much insight into NBA basketball as far as that goes. But that was – now, yes, I'm biased because UVA won probably a little bit and UVA was in it. But that was one of the best championship games you'll see. I mean, the Villanova win on the last play against Carolina a couple of years ago obviously is up on that list too. But if this one's second to that one in, say, the last 20 years, that's not a bad one to be second to. And from a standpoint of the two teams just making big shot after big shot, there's not much more in terms of drama. I'll tell you what, from inside that arena, that's the loudest thing I'll ever remember. I've been to loud concerts. I've been to loud football games. But 72,000 people, the first make of the game. And I think Virginia scored. I'm trying to think who made a driving layup to score the first 2 points. But the noise after Virginia's first make to go up 2-0, it sounded like the end of the world. It got louder after that. Every time a basket went in, the place was going ballistic. And that was the case for 2.5 hours. That was the best environment I will ever be in. And so if those guys didn't like it, then shame on them.
It was funny to me from a standpoint of that. I think you're spot on. When they made the decision a few years ago to focus on Charles and Kenny, Clark's been there forever doing it, and I just thought it was an odd combination because, again, it would be, I know the adjustment for me, well, knowing the level of college basketball I watch, it's a different conversation to talk about the NBA game. And I know Kenny did win a national championship at North Carolina, but you're in a situation where I don't see them as college basketball guys. And it's funny when you throw in somebody, for example, Wally Zerbiak, somebody who had a memorable run. And then you're in a situation where somebody who's connected to college basketball, and that's the extent of wanting to focus on those guys. I just thought it was funny that you're sitting there when you got two teams playing the same exact style, and they're saying, somebody, you can't win a national championship this way. Somebody's got to get uncomfortable. But it was amazing to watch. Actually, both of them were. We obviously, since we talked last, there was a national semifinal game there.
There was.
And you're sitting there, and we were actually, Lynn and I were actually watching that one at Buffalo Long Wings, and when you're down big inside of the last minute, it's like, okay, Lynn gets a little nervous in that process, and I'm going, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. And especially after the game against Purdue. So when you're sitting there and going through that, and Kyle hits the three, and then he hits all three of the free throws, going back to that moment for just a minute, what are you thinking while you're watching that last minute of that game play out?
Honestly, I'm thinking the same thing I thought in each of the other two of the three final games. I'll even go back to Purdue. Yeah, I'd kind of given up. I mean, I don't want to say I'd given up, but I had. I was watching, and I had a sad look on my face, very pouty look on my face, because it just felt like Ty Jerome picked up that silly fourth foul, and that's when that Auburn game turned. It was 57-48 when he got the foul. A frustration foul, about 4.5 to go or something like that. And he got that foul, and then the game just turned. And, and Virginia goes 5 minutes and 15 seconds without scoring a basket. So scoring a point, I should say, to emphasize. And then, Auburn hits those two free throws. Virginia runs down the court, and Kyle hits that wild three. I mean, it was a wild three. He was, running, catching the ball, and shooting all in one motion, which Kyle does a lot, but he did it. And so, okay, now there's life. Now the door is slightly ajar again. It was closed. It was closed pretty tight, but now it's ajar again. And then Auburn goes and makes the mistake of, I think it was Jared Harper, missed a free throw. He missed the second of the two-shot free throw. Okay, now it's open again, but you look up at the scoreboard, and Auburn's got 3 fouls to give. And they give all 3 fouls. And so, Virginia finally a second and a half to go. Wow, what do we do here? And I'll say this, I'm sitting as far away on the floor as you could possibly be to be still on the floor from where that play happened. I was behind the Auburn basket at that stage, and it was on the other side of the floor of the UVA basket. And so when the shot initially hits, you see Kyle with his head in his jersey, and you think, man, the season's over. In fact, and Zach pointed this out in one of his columns, the PA announcer actually announced. The buzzer sounded. The PA announcer says in your final score, Auburn 62, Virginia 60. But and Kyle has his head in his hands, and he looks like just like he did at the UMBC game last year. He says afterwards he knew right away he'd been fouled, and he was trying to calm himself down because he knew those would be the 3 biggest free throws he shot in his entire life, probably ever will shoot in his entire life. But we as fans didn't know that. We on the floor didn't know that. You at home probably knew more than we did. And so when the referees go to the scorer's table to look, we're like, oh my God, this game's not over yet. In the arena, we didn't know. And then we start realizing the longer those officials take to look at that, okay, they're doing one of two things. They're looking, he got fouled. I mean, at that point, the game's not over. They're looking to see how much time's left on the clock, and or was it a 2 or a 3? And so that realization starts to dawn on you in the arena. Oh my God, this game is not over. I don't know what it's like to have a near-death experience, but that's about as close you get to one. As far in the arena, again, we don't know what you guys are seeing on TV. So then you're thinking, oh my, he's got to make the first free throw. At this stage, because we've seen this, Auburn actually fouled a 3-point shooter at the end of regulation in their first NCAA tournament game, the New Mexico State game. They were up 2, they fouled a 3-point shooter, and the kid missed 2 of the 3 free throws. So, okay, got to make the first one. That's the most important free throw. Okay, he made that one. Now he's got to make this one. This is the most important free throw, because if he misses this one, then the third one's the pressure one. Okay, so he makes that one. Okay, good. Now Bruce Pearl calls timeout, and then after the game, we're talking with players and coaches, and they all say to a person, and of course, I don't, again, have the ability to see what you guys saw on TV. That's one disadvantage of being in the arena. But we're trying to look at the UVA huddle. We see Kyle saying off to the side. All the players and coaches say they treated him like a pitcher throwing a no-hitter. We're not talking to him. he's persona non grata. And Jason Williford, the assistant coach, got to talk with him, and he said our whole focus during that timeout was here's what we're going to do defensively after Kyle makes this third free throw. And so then he makes the free. Those were the calmest 3 free throws for a guy shooting 3 free throws to send his team to a national championship game. He walked up there like he was in a gym with nobody in there and made those shots. And wow, for him to be in that situation after what happened last year, he was the face of that loss to UMBC. His picture crying at center court right after that game is the picture of that. For him to be the guy to make those shots, that's really nice.
Well, it was amazing because, again, watching it on a large TV screen, you're sitting there and you're not sure what's going on. We didn't know on the television side of things. We didn't know all of that much more than you did because nobody knew. And then they show the replay, and you're going, please, if they're going to call a foul, please let there be a foul. And sure enough, I mean, there was clearly contact in the equation. And when you're sitting there, and what flashback for me as this was happening, and this went unnoticed to a lot of people, but after the loss last year, Tony did it. You know, you take your 2 or 3 players to the post game, and after that loss last year, he didn't take his seniors.
Right.
He didn't take his seniors to that table. He said they're not the ones that are going to have to answer questions for the next 12 months. You're in a situation, and that was probably a blip on a lot of people's radar screen. But to me, that was a seed that you're planting there, and those guys were having to answer it. And I think that Kyle Guy, again, being the vocal leader, if you will, in the situation to where the story could not get to be a bigger story from last year, I think because Tony and Guy wouldn't let it happen. They owned it. They just accepted it. They said it's part of who we are, and they moved on. But to see, when he went up to the line, and in my mind, it was right out of the scene out of the movie Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, after you make this free throw, and I'm going, there's just no doubt in my mind he's going to hit all 3 of these. I said, so then it's like the game show where you're getting to bank money for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or $1 million mile. You hit a plateau. And when you and I spoke last week, I'm going, okay, we hit a plateau. We made it to the Final Four. They can't take that from us. We banked that.
Right.
But now that we banked that, how about we just go win with it?
Yeah.
And when in my mind, when they got past Auburn, I'm sitting there saying, now you're just one step away from creating something that will be there in the history books. And it'll be I think it's one of the greater runs as a whole. When you're tested or pushed in 5 of your 6 games, because they talk about teams have one game, where they were really tested. I truly believe that UVA had 5 of those games.
Yeah.
And then you're in a situation to where I thought the Oregon game was one that you're sitting there with a minute to play going, wow, don't really want to lose this one, because if you're trying to perform a makeover, if you will, or a do-over, you don't want it to end at that level. And each time that they won a game, you're just sitting there going, okay, that's the next step. Now you get the ultimate bank. But one of the things, as we're talking about it, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to share with the people listening some of the actual experiences, aside from the court, aside from the analysis of the game, some of the things that you were actually able to experience while being in Minneapolis, during all of it. As you said, things that you saw in the gym or in the building, but what was the experience as a whole? We all know now that Virginia won the game, but tell me what it is that you'd want to share with people listening that being in Minneapolis allowed you to see and feel that for those of us who were watching on TV.
So the first thing, I guess, would be, I've never been to a basketball game in a football arena, and I was a little, I wouldn't say concerned, I just was interested when we got there what it would look like, because, people, Syracuse plays its home basketball games in its football stadium, and it doesn't look right. They move stands up, it just looks odd. The basketball court still looks like a little postage stamp on top of a football field, and it did not feel that way. At all. It was, I don't know how they were able to do it the way they did it, but it felt as natural as it could be to have 72,000 people watching a basketball game. That's a stadium that's only 3 years old. It was opened in 2016. It hosted the Super Bowl. And again, they made it feel as natural as possible. It was loud. The sound is in my ears, and thankfully it will always be there. Every shot, and all, I didn't watch the Michigan State Texas Tech game because we were post game covering the locker room and that kind of thing from the UVA Auburn game, so I didn't see any of that game from inside the arena. But the two games that I watched, it was so loud, and it was every shot. It wasn't, hey, let's wait till late in the game and get into this. It was everything about it. Even during the timeouts in the arena. I remember a few from the championship game because I was trying to calm myself down by looking up at the scoreboards and seeing who they were highlighting. And, they made it a point the camera folks made it a point to find the famous alums in the stands. And there weren't many Texas Tech famous alums. They kept showing Patrick Mahomes. They showed him a lot. Michael Crabtree was the only other one I remember seeing up there, but a lot of Patrick Mahomes. But the UVA side, you had Katie Couric, you had Tiki Barber, you had Chris Long. Ralph Sampson got up and he was doing cheerleading. That place went crazy. The UVA side of it anyway went crazy for him. Heath Miller. Even the Texas Tech fans just joined in at the Heath when Heath Miller was shown on the big screen because we all know to say Heath when we see Heath Miller. Just the pregame pageantry. Every time a player would walk out to the court, getting a standing ovation like an hour and a half before the game. It was that kind of thing was going on. And even outside the arena, there was a really cool thing. The new UVA president, and I think I can still call him the new UVA president. He's been there for about a year, Jim Ryan. He started this tradition. He's an avid distance runner, and so he started this tradition on grounds when he's at UVA, calling it Run with Jim. And he does a 4-mile run, roughly a 4-mile run around grounds, and he does it. And then he started saying, "Hey, if anybody wants to join me, run with me." And so when he's on grounds, he'll have a few people run with him every morning. Well, he did one of those on championship game day and advertised it ahead of time. So, of course, I'm there. It was a 20-minute car ride from where we stayed to get there, but I'm up at 6:30 in the morning to be there at 7:15 to run with. They estimated 130 other Wahoos were there. And we ran through the streets of Minneapolis. We took over Minneapolis for about an hour. And we ran through there, and I remember when he got there, he stood up and said, "Welcome to the first annual UVA National Championship game, Run with Jim." And I said to myself, I like that guy. He's a good guy. He's saying first annual. And also, so then we on Monday after, so that was early Monday morning, around noon or so. Crystal, my wife Crystal, obviously, she went with me. She sat in the stands in the VAF, the Virginia Athletic Foundation section, and she had so she had access there. And we decided, we're not doing anything else. The game's not for 8 hours. Let's just go hang out around the arena, see what's going on. So we get to the arena. We walked about a half mile, and we stumbled upon the UVA team hotel, and there were. I don't think I'm exaggerating to say thousands of people wearing orange and blue hanging around the UVA, the block around the UVA team hotel. It was basically Charlottesville in Minneapolis, and it was a hotel. There was a restaurant next door. There was a little indoor shopping mall like 2 doors down the street. That's where everybody congregated. Every time a player walked through there, I mean, like the guys had to go get lunch. They had their little box lunches. it didn't matter. It's Ty Jerome with lunch. We're all going to start screaming. I mean, there were thousands of people screaming for Ty Jerome walking with his lunch. Hey, there's Jack Salt. He's got lunch now. Let's all go take pictures of Jack walking around with lunch. It was that kind of environment. And so while we're there, so we're hanging out here. We're leaving here and going to the arena. This is where to be. The most recent former UVA president, Teresa Sullivan, was walking around, and I wanted to go introduce myself to her. She was, if you want to say and tell Jim Ryan, she was my favorite UVA president. I love Teresa Sullivan. I had never had a chance to meet her, and I asked her, hey, is it okay if I take a selfie with you? And not only did she take a selfie with me, she talked to me for 10 minutes, and it was a great conversation. I love her even more now. I love the public persona that I'd seen before, but I got to know Teresa Sullivan a little bit. She's a huge sports fan, and she was there. She talked about the College World Series back in 2015, and then how great this experience was, and so there were some of the other famous alums were there. I didn't see them myself, but Zach Peerless also by chance. I didn't realize this then, but he was among the thousands there. He saw Justin Anderson and I think Malcolm Brogdon there. Devin Hall was on hand somewhere around that periphery, so it was just the place to be. And then we all start making our way over towards U.S. Bank Stadium, about a half-mile walk or whatever it was, and then we have the fun of championship night. So, I mean, Chris and I lucked into a really cool Monday, and it wasn't just the game. It started for us at about 7 in the morning when I'm out there running with 130 other UVA alums and President Jim Ryan, and so that was a heck of a day. I've got to write about that because it was just an amazing experience to be a part of that, a community movement almost. It was a great experience.
But you're sitting there, and it's one of those things, listening to you describe it all, I'm actually able to picture that. And we talked briefly just before we started the podcast, and you mentioned there's a pretty big day coming up at Scott Stadium. What can you tell the folks about that?
Yeah, it's been, we got the note. That was, they were ready for this because even before I think I walked back to the locker room, I already had the press release from UVA Athletics tomorrow now. And we're recording this podcast on Friday. Saturday, April 13th, there will be a community celebration of the national championship. Now, on Tuesday, the team flew back, Tuesday during the day. And they already sort of had an impromptu, if you want to call it impromptu, because they did announce to the public, hey, we'll be here at 4:30. The team landed. They got on the bus. They got to JPJ, and thousands of people greeted them at JPJ, at least walking into JPJ. I'm told, because we were still in Minnesota on Tuesday, I'm told that not only were there thousands congregated at JPJ, but this tells you how big this was for Charlottesville. There were people lining the route from Airport Road all the way to JPJ to wave at the team bus going by. That's amazing to me that it meant that much. But tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Saturday, 2 o'clock, Scott Stadium. JPJ not big enough to hold this party. They're doing it at Scott Stadium. Temperatures expected to be in the low to mid 70s. Good weather. There's rain today in Virginia, but tomorrow the weather's supposed to lift. We're supposed to have nice warm temperatures. Great day for this. And here's how many people they think are going to be there. They're giving out commemorative posters to the first 25,000 people who show up. So they're thinking there's going to be a lot of people if they're saying the first 25,000. I said this to Jerry, for the people listening out there. I said this before we got on the podcast. I said, there may very well be more people at this celebration than there have been at any UVA football games in the last 10 years. This ought to be something for folks who weren't able to make it out to Minneapolis and who live in Virginia, anywhere within a good distance of Charlottesville. You need to be there. It's free, and it ought to be a tremendous experience to be a part of that. And I'm looking forward to it personally, also myself.
The question, Chris, that I have in my mind, and I didn't want to ask the question out loud until we got near the end, because it is a question. There's three amazing young men here. We're talking about Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, and DeAndre Hunter. And I know that, at least on my end, I haven't heard anybody say anything officially. And selfishly, I'm going, wow, let's just come back and do this again. What are your thoughts or what you're hearing about these three folks coming back or taking their talents to the NBA next season?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm still so much in the glow of where, and a lot of folks are in the glow of where we've been and where we are right now. I have, though. I mean, I haven't written about this, and I will after tomorrow about that question. But I've been looking at a lot of mock drafts because the tournament will have an impact on what you see of people. And DeAndre Hunter certainly was already a projected top 10 pick in the draft, and that's only enhanced with what he did in the final, dominating Jarrett Culver, another fellow top 10 player in the draft, dominating him both offensively and defensively. We were all saying, all of us on the media row were saying after the game, DeAndre made himself several more $1 million tonight. And we all said it with a smile on our face. He's almost certainly going to be going to the NBA draft and hiring an agent. I don't think there's any question. If he didn't, then we all need to sign up. We need to start a petition on change.org and make him go. He needs to go pro. There's nothing he can do in college except get hurt. I root for the kid to go off to the NBA and become a star. That's what he's going to be. The other two are a little more questionable. I'll start with Ty Jerome. Ty, I'm seeing in mock drafts anywhere from late first round to mid to late second round. It would not surprise me, and this is totally me speculating. There's nothing informed about this because really there was nobody in the media room informed about this either. So we're all speculating. But as far as Ty, it would not surprise me to see him put his name out there in the draft portal. Just to gauge because once you do that, then you're due a report back. They'll tell you where we think you are, that kind of thing. I doubt I'd be very surprised if he were to hire an agent. But I think you can even hire an agent now and still actually end up going back to college depending on situation. I saw that in the story. I didn't know that rule myself, but I saw that in the story about another prospect who announced. But I would not expect him to even do that. I fully think he would put his name out there, if he puts his name out there, just to kind of gauge. Because if you're a late first-round pick, your contract's guaranteed. First-round picks in the NBA draft are guaranteed contracts. That means you sign a piece of paper, you got a job for 5 years. Or at least you get paid for a job for 5 years. But if you're a second-round pick, there's nothing guaranteed. You might get – now Joe Harris and Malcolm Brogdon, both of whom had – graduated, exhausted their eligibility, etc. They were both early second-round picks, and they got nice rookie deals being early second-round picks. So it's not like if you're an early second-round pick, there's no guarantee. But Devin Hall was also a second-round pick. Now Devin Hall also, he was a fifth-year senior. He also exhausted his eligibility, graduated, had a graduate degree from UVA. But he was a second-round pick, and he played this year in Australia in the G League. So I don't know that if you're Ty Jerome and you're not guaranteed to be a first-round pick, that you give up one more year of eligibility, one more year where you can buttress your case to be a more secure first-round pick, a lottery pick perhaps, that you don't do that. So it would not surprise me if Jerome ends up throwing his name out there but then coming back. And in fact, if I had to bet, he's coming back next year. Kyle Guy is a different case entirely. I've not even seen Kyle's name on any mock drafts. The most outstanding player of the Final Four, third-team All-American, third-team AP All-American like DeAndre Hunter. But the issue with Kyle, and you can't change it, but he's small. He's 6'2", he's 175 pounds, and he doesn't play point guard. There are guys that size named Trae Young and Steph Curry who are very successful in the NBA, and I think Kyle will be an NBA player. But he's not going to be a first-round pick NBA player. He's going to be a guy that a team takes on and says, Kyle, we're going to – in Summer League, you're going to run point. We want you to be a Steph Curry or Trae Young type point, but you're going to run point. And you're going to need to learn that in Summer League. We'll develop you early in your NBA career, and eventually he'll be successful at that. But he's not – what he does at UVA doesn't translate to what he'll do in the NBA. So he's back. I mean, I don't think there's any question that he's back next year. So 2 of the 3 will be back. 1 better leave. If not, we're all going to kick his butt and make him go, and that's DeAndre Hunter.
But it's interesting because basically we got 1 yes, 1 no, 1 maybe.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, again, I don't have the same level of insight you do, but that's pretty much how I see that from out here. And it's a situation, I had somebody ask me this week, Krista, declaring for the draft it's become something to where there are 10 times the number of players declaring for the draft than there are draft spots.
Yeah.
And it is just grown and grown and grown. And what you just said about DeAndre, I've had somebody ask me this week, hey, I noticed that Zion hasn't declared. What are your thoughts? I said, please let him go. It's just the sheer volume of what the same thing, at different level, but you say about DeAndre. Zion Williamson does not need to play another year of college basketball.
Right.
It's because of everything that's at risk.
Yes.
You're in a situation to where, but that's something, the timing of it is, and how it's handled is always crucial. And, I've seen players in the past few years, Chris, without naming names, declare for the draft in the locker room after they've lost their last game.
Yeah.
And I've never understood that. I'm going, what? Why would you do that? Why would you? I mean, it almost feels disrespectful to me. So I'm glad that everybody's going to have a chance to soak it all in. And I imagine that tomorrow is going to be a great day in Charlottesville. And that's something that the city needs. And I'm equally excited for the city as for the school and the students and the team. It's great for Charlottesville to be the center on a map for all of the right reasons. And just to sneak a couple of things in real quick, on the ladies' side of things from the Final Four, 3 tremendous Final Four games. Both the semifinals were one-possession games and under a minute. The final scores ended up being 5, and literally in the UConn Notre Dame game, it was a situation of who was going to miss first. And in the Baylor-Oregon game, the same thing. And then the national championship game ended up being a one-point game as well. So on the ladies' side, they had a phenomenal tournament down in Tampa. And if you can appreciate this at all, now the WNBA, Chris, the draft only had 12 slots per round because there's 12 teams. But Notre Dame, their entire starting 5 got drafted this week. There's only 36 spots. The entire starting 5 got drafted, so it'll be an interesting situation. That's the first time that's ever happened on the men or the women's side. But they had a great show down in Tampa, and I'm really hoping now. This has been awesome, and I'm looking forward to hearing and living tomorrow through your eyes and words. But I'm hoping this isn't the end of the basketball conversation for the season yet, because there's an awful lot of things that have happened in the past few weeks that have really been amazing, and I'm looking forward to running through some of that with you as far as all the things that are happening in both the ACC and on the national team.
Yeah, we do. We have a lot to unpack. That's right. There is a lot going on, a lot of moves, and then we can start looking forward to next year. So, but this will put a nice bow on what has been just the most amazing UVA basketball season ever, certainly. And even if they win additional championships down the road, this will always be the first, and we'll remember this one more fondly, certainly, as a result. So. Well, for Jerry Carter, I am Chris Graham. I am signing off here on the most fun UVA basketball podcast I've ever done. So thanks to Jerry for that, and thanks to you for listening. Wahoo wah.